Welcome back. We're here with Brandon from Warm Heart Life. Brandon, thank you for coming on the podcast. I'm very excited for you to cover public speaking. I think this is a topic that many people struggle with, so thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. You know, it's funny when I hear public speaking because I never thought I was going to be in public speaking. I took a class my freshman year of college and I was getting C's and D's no matter how hard I tried. And then my teacher, I asked her, I said, what do I got to do to get a better grade? She says, Brandon, if I were you, I'd talk about something you're passionate about. And so I did a speech on my childhood crush, Shania Twain, and ended up getting an A. But what was even cooler is over 10 years later, two people from that speech still remember me talking on Shania Twain. And I realized that when you talk about something you're passionate about, all of a sudden, you know, there could be an opportunity there. And so I started creating opportunities for myself and others. And when I started Warm Heart Life, that was the core value: create opportunities for yourself and others. That was one of the four. And when I think of you and what you're doing, you're creating opportunities for business owners, but also as yourself to grow. So when you asked, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? I was like, absolutely, because I can already tell that you align with a lot of what I do. So I'm excited for today.
Yes, man, I am too. And on that topic of making a memorable speech, what do you think separates that speech that just kind of goes over your head and you forget it as soon as the person's done talking versus, like you mentioned, people remembering what you said 10 years later?
Yeah, in speaking, facts tell, stories sell. It's a concept that some people may have heard of, some people may have not. But what I mean by that is when you tell a story, if you tell it in a way that someone could tell it back as soon as you say it, then it's going to stick, right? And it's going to be memorable. When you tell a fact, or when you tell a statement, or you start using words like you have to, you need to, don't do this, it makes people feel like they're in a boxing fight and they're getting jab after jab after jab. So stories stick, and when a story can stick, it can sell people on whatever you're trying to get them to do, whether it's to think about that when they're in a similar situation, whether it's to take interest in your product or service, whatever it may be. When you can share a story, it resonates with people. And so that's how you become memorable. So when I say something like, I was the kid who used to fall asleep in class. 20 years old, every time I would go to class, I just couldn't wait to get out of there to do anything but learn this BS stuff that they were having us memorize. And then as soon as the test was done, it would just disappear. And then I go into this seminar. It was a mandatory seminar at night. Last place I wanted to be, junior year of college. And this guy starts talking about how he wanted to be the best in the world at what he did. And all he did was share stories about how he reached out to the top 10 people in the world who were the best at what he wanted to be the best at. And he explained how he learned, observed, shadowed, studied, and met all 10 of those people. And eventually he became one of the best. And so I said, why am I overcomplicating things? This is the first teacher that seemed to get me to raise my forehead off of my forearm and pay attention. And so I implemented that right away. I wrote down my top 10 list. I was interested in golf fitness at the time. And so 3 weeks in, I met the number 3 guy on my list. We had a phone call. And he told me everything I needed to do to be successful in that career. 6 years later, I get nominated top 50 in America at what I did. I was 26 years old and the youngest person on that list. Now, I share with you that not to say, oh, I accomplished something great at a young age. I share with you to say that you can do a very similar thing if you implement this simple principle of thinking about what is it that you want to be the best at, then who are the best at that, then how can you go learn, observe, shadow, study, and meet those people, and then implement what they say, and then you will go from point A to point B at an accelerated rate. Now, that's an example of a story. Now, if I go more into facts, I could just say, hey, if you want to be the best, go learn from the best. Right? That's a motivational speaker. That's what a lot of people do. Like, but no, it's not going to resonate with someone unless they can relate. Like, I was that guy who would just fall asleep in class because I was so sick and tired of learning crap that I didn't see application to. It wasn't that the teachers weren't trying. It was that many of the teachers didn't understand how important it was to talk about pain points and then to share stories that could resonate with people, so then they would be open to the solution. I always tell people, I'm like, listen, I speak not for people to take notes. I speak for these stories to sink inside these people's memories so that whenever they find themselves in a similar situation, they understand what they need to do next because of the story that was shared, not the note that was taken.
And when you are going about telling a good story, what is one thing you really, really focus on to make sure that it is encapsulating? Because, anyone can tell a story, but how do you make sure it sticks with people?
One of the keys with storytelling is to understand that the first part is to get people's attention. And so too many people put too much crap into speeches. Like, I see this all the time. Oh, my name is Brandon Gaydorus, and I do this, this, and this. And next thing you know, 40 seconds are gone. I was looking at a speech with someone yesterday. I said, yeah, honestly, the first 40 seconds could just be taken out. Like, it doesn't need it. When you can just get right into the story, it's going to be a lot easier to get the attention. Now, after you get people's attention, then make sure that you address the problem that they're facing. So if it's someone who's a little lazy, you can say something like, if you're sick of sitting on the couch eating popcorn instead of a beautiful... Okay, let me restart that again because I got a funny version of this. So,
yeah.
If you're sick of watching Netflix on Friday nights with your popcorn as a +1 and you're ready to actually meet someone new, understand that people like me have been in a similar situation. I used to sit at home waiting for someone to text me to do something. I used to see people out and about and I would like someone, but I would be too intimidated to go up to them. So I would just sit there closed off and take a drink instead of go up to someone that I liked. And the one thing that I learned that helped shift this is that one of the best compliments that you could give is just to go up to someone and say hi. I used to way overthink this. Like, what am I going to use a pickup line? How should I approach? What should I say? And then when I realized it's a compliment when you go up to someone, all of a sudden I started meeting a lot more people. So literally, if you're looking to meet new people and get away from the popcorn being your +1, then just go up and say, hi, what's your name? And a lot of times that will lead to the next question or the next statement that could have a much longer conversation.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that the guy was introducing himself in a 40-second, very boring manner. For business owners that are either going to networking events or going to introduce themselves, do you think there's another way to be like, hey, my name is Brandon and I do this in a storytelling manner?
100%, yeah. And so I'm going to answer that, and then just to finish the best way to tell a story, make sure you get someone's attention, address the problem. There needs to be some sort of credibility. What is the solution? And then after that, there can be a call to action, which definitely doesn't need to be an actual call to action. The story could be told such in a way that that person wants to act on whatever you expressed, right? So when you're in a networking setting, it could be very simple. Like when someone says, hey, what do you do? I'll just say, hey, I teach public speaking. And then if they initiate that they want to hear more about that, because a lot of times people are, oh, no way, that's my biggest fear. Oh, I've been interested in doing that. I've been talking about doing some more of that, but I just haven't got. So if they say stuff like that, then I know they're interested. Then I could tell a story that can help resonate. And it's just like I could tell the Shania Twain story if I want to get some humor, Or I could say, yeah, like I thought I was a good speaker when I was younger. And then I went to this speaker school by this guy who had been teaching for 40 years around the country. He even got a $3 million deal with Reeboks at one point. And when I went in there for the 3 days, I started to see what someone who had implemented this for many decades and taught for many decades was doing. And so I started to see an area of opportunity in public speaking. And I just said, what can I do every day to keep going? And so I knew nobody was going to hire me. So I committed to making 4 posts a week on social media. I created a different account because I was too embarrassed to post on my personal page. And almost 7 years later, I would be shocked if you go back 1 week and don't find those 4 posts. And so I always tell people, if you're interested in getting into speaking, don't just sign up for a course. Don't just think that you could pay money and all of a sudden you're going to be good. Understand that you will have to treat getting better at speaking like a comedian, like an actor, like an actress, like a musician, any type of performer. But I will say, taking that speaker school 7 years ago helped me understand the process to accelerating and helped me see a path that I could have never seen before that. So that's probably about a 2-minute story. And you know, if I want to tell like a 45-second story, I can tell the Shania Twain one just to loosen it up.
So this is very, very interesting to me because I've never thought of it like this. So how you do it is you just give a very basic, like, hey, my name's Brandon, I'm a public speaking coach, and that's it.
If someone asks, if someone, otherwise I just won't even say. Like, I'll wait for the person to ask, yeah.
And then this allows you to then, if they are interested, hook them with a story which then pulls them in, like, even deeper. Instead of being like, my name's Brandon, I'm a public speaking coach, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. You lay the foundation, and then you hook them in with the story even more.
Yeah, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Not something you haven't heard before, right?
Yeah.
And so in the networking settings, if you can just genuinely get to know someone, at some point, they're most likely going to ask, what do you do? And when they ask that, they're a lot more likely to take interest versus the person in the networking setting to say, hey, I do this, this, and this. I help these type of people. It's like, okay, cool. There's no way that I'm going to take interest in working with you if there's not trust there. And so one way to develop trust is just to be a normal human being. You know, and it's just like, you see someone with a margarita, it's like, oh, props to you. I've been staying away from those for a little bit. But I used to love them when I would go down to Mexico. Yeah, and it loosens up the mood. And like, when I'm out at the bars and a girl asks me like, hey, what do you do? I just started giving my fake job because I knew there was an automatic judgment whether I said I was a stripper or a CEO of a company. And so I just would start to say, you know what? I'm actually in the adult film industry. And I remember one girl goes, you're in the adult film industry? I said, girl, keep your eyes up here. That's only for my subscribers. And after that, we had about a 15-minute conversation, laughing, giggling. A guy came up to her later that night and asked her what she did, and she said the same thing. And he started laughing.
That's awesome.
And the funny thing is, when I see that girl randomly around town, you know, she smiles and laughs, you know, and it's just kind of one of those things. It's like, why do we need to prove ourselves in front of someone right away when they don't even know us? Versus if we can prove ourselves by just taking interest in them and saying hello. Like, saying hello is one of the most underestimated compliments you could ever give. Because that shows that there's something about that person that made you want to say hi to them. Maybe it was the way they were standing. Maybe it was their presence. Maybe it's you do want to do business, but you do want to meet that person because you never know. Maybe they can help you, or maybe you can help them.
Absolutely. And I now want to shift to one of your books, which is How to Become a Phenomenal Public Speaker. What is the number one thing you think people can take away from reading that book?
Well, it depends on what someone wants to read it for. If you want to become a great speaker, the number one thing that I think you could take away is when I retook my mentor speaker school, I was curious about learning something that maybe I'd heard from him before, but that I wasn't thinking of. So I asked him about practice habits. And I said, how much do you practice your speech before you give it? And he says, Brandon, I practice each speech I give at least 5 times before I give it in front of a live audience. I said, 5 times? You're speaking for 3 days. You practice this 5 times? He said, Brandon, if people are going to spend time, energy, and money to come see me speak, you better bet you I'm going to prepare properly. And to do that, I run through this at least 5 times so that I can be efficient and effective with the way that it's delivered. And I was like, okay. I was maybe doing 1 or 2 times at that point. And I was already teaching speaking at this point. And I was maybe only practicing my speeches 1 or 2 times beforehand. So I reverted back to a 5-minute keynote, and I started to develop the practice habits of practicing it at least 5 times. What happened? My pace was better. My filler words were out of there. My eye contact with the audience was not only better, but I was more present. So because I knew what I was going to say, if there was a reaction from someone, kind of like a comedian does crowd work, I was able to adapt better knowing where I was going to go with it, even if there was a curveball thrown in during that speech. And so that took my speaking to the next level. That's what gave me confidence to start doing comedy. That's what gave me confidence to now I do a 2-hour, 20-minute keynote. You're going to meet probably Tony Robbins and Dr. Joe Dispenza that can do that. I don't know many other people that can keep heads up for 2.5 hours speaking, right? There's musicians, Taylor Swift, Eric Church, like I've seen them go 3-hour sets, but you're not going to see many public speakers that can go as long as me. And a big reason why that is because of the art of practicing at least 5 times. So if there was one takeaway, that's what I would recommend. There's a lot of things in that book, but you will not be a phenomenal public speaker if you are not practicing.
Incredible. Great advice. I love it. Last question here on the public speaking side of things. One of the most important things I think you mentioned is the filler words. We actually talked about this privately on our call. I feel like a lot of people struggle with these a lot, if that's the ums, if that's the likes, or if that's the you knows. How important do you think it is to remove those from your speech to make it clear and be able to captivate people's, eyes?
I think it's important. I think it's overrated. If you watch the most viewed TED Talk ever, Sir Ken Robinson, you'll see he uses ums quite a bit throughout there, but he uses great storytelling and he gets you thinking incredibly throughout that speech. So with that said, though, that TED Talk was also almost 20 years ago. So in the current day, every half a second, quarter of a second, full second matters. So if you're using filler words during your speeches, if you're posting content and there's filler words and you're not taking it out, you are doing your audience a disservice, because it is, in my mind, I don't have a statistic behind this, but in my mind it is 10 times, if not more, harder to keep people's attention nowadays because of the influx of media and social media as a whole. So I tell people on social media, you got 1 second to get people's attention. In speaking, you got about 3 seconds to get people's attention. That's not just from the beginning, but every single story that you transition to, every single point you transition to, you got about 3 seconds. That's how easy it is to lose people's attention in person. Social media, if you're not editing nowadays, you got, in my mind, no shot. Like people say, oh, well, it's more authentic without edits. Yeah, okay. You're going to get barely any views because people don't have the attention span nowadays to see right 10 times in 1 minute. And most people who are not speaking consistently are using words like that. And that's okay. But understand that you can edit those out. And then if you're speaking in front of people, you can practice your speech beforehand to help get those out of there. If you're going to do a Q&A format, understand that you probably will have uhs, you probably will have ums, you probably will have long ands. That's why what happens is you want to put yourself on these podcasts with Easton. You want to put yourself in these in-person settings where you're getting Q&As, because what you're going to see is you're going to start to get the same questions over and over and over and over again. So you asked me beforehand, is there anything specific to talk about? And I said, whatever you want to talk about. Why? Because I already know the questions you're going to ask, whether they're sent to me or not, and I'm prepared for them because I've been on so many of these. So understand, if you're in a Q&A format, the best way to get better at that is to continue to put yourself in those situations, and then you're going to start to see the same questions get asked over and over again, and you're going to have those stories down pat. Now, in a speech, you got no excuse. If you practice it at least 5 times, that's going to clean up. If you tell good stories, you're going to get away with filler words a lot better than if you need to do this, don't do that. Oh man, it just makes me just want to just get up and leave.
Yeah, for sure. And what would you say to someone that wants to start speaking, but they struggle with a speech impediment? Maybe they have a lisp, maybe they have a stutter. What would your kind of tips be to them?
Okay, so this is a very great question, and there are speech pathologists and specialists for that. I don't specifically do that, but my best recommendation is to just do it, because so often we have a problem, an issue that holds us back, and it keeps us away from actually trying the stuff that can help us get better. So I had a TEDx speaker, Tony Peck. He grew up with a speech impediment. And what did he do? He worked with the speech teachers. He started to get over that fear and over that impediment. And then when he started to get into public speaking, he focused on speaking a lot instead of trying to speak perfect. And now you see him speaking and you're like, wow, that's a pretty damn good speaker. But you don't see how often he's sharing these stories. He's getting in front of people. He's going to event, like an underestimated form of public speaking is going to networking events and talking to people. I share a lot of similar stories on stage that I do in a networking event, on a sales call as well.
And now on the personal side of things, do you think as humans, we are born with a purpose, or we create our own purpose?
It's funny that you say that. Whenever I get asked this question, I think of my mentor, and he said, I'm so sick of people asking me what their purpose is and how to find their purpose. He said, you got one purpose on this earth, and that's to leave it better than when you got here. That's it. And then when you think about it, it's like, okay, if I could leave this world better when I exit it than when I got here, then I probably did something pretty awesome while I'm on this earth. And so I think about that all the time. It's like, hey, my purpose is to make this world a better place. A lot of people see Warm Heart Life and they get inspired. They wonder how I do it. It's like, listen, I had success in my first career. I climbed that mountain. It was lonely. I was unfulfilled. And I was really questioning if all of that time, energy, and effort was worth it. And so I said, if I'm going to pursue something else, I could have stayed in that career, done really well, probably been in good shape to retire, to be honest with you, at a probably 35. I can't guarantee that, but I was on very good pace to make very good money quickly because I was just getting so good at what I did. But it just wasn't fulfilling. And so I said, if I'm going to take another shot at something, I just want to take away all limitations and just go for something that I could grow together with people along the way. So 1 year in, it's fun. 2 year in, it's fun. 3 years in, it's fun. And it has been. Like, I just had my comedy special 2 nights ago. one of the biggest thrills of my life. And now I'm working on putting it together as an album. Like, who would have thought the monotone kid that would I wouldn't get stuffed in lockers, but that was a conversation in high school, stuffing me in a locker. I was very shy in my freshman year of high school, all the way out through my senior year. Who would have thought that kid could potentially put out a comedy album? Now, I don't know if I'm going to do it or not, but I think I'm going to put this out, and I hope that it inspires a lot of other people to create opportunities for themselves and for others, because when you do that, life gets a lot more fulfilling and a lot more exciting.
And your story is very relatable, especially being the shy kid in school. Why do you think you were able to take that leap to do the things that you were uncomfortable versus someone else that could have done the things that you've done but decided not to? Like, what do you think it was about either your traits or the way you grew up? Like, what was that aspect that made you say, I am going to chase my full potential?
Yeah, so they say things are caught, not taught. So naturally, in a sense, you will become like your parents unless you experience other things. And so my parents, they instilled a lot of good habits in me. They instilled discipline. They instilled trust. They instilled being there. Like, they were great in that aspect. One thing I didn't see a lot was I didn't see a lot of social life. And so I knew that if I wanted to understand how to connect with people and relate with people more, then I was going to have to get in different atmospheres. So 18-year-old Brandon, I thank God the way he thought then, because 18-year-old Brandon says, hey, I got to get out of New York. So I lived in upstate New York. And I need to start seeing different places and meeting new people. So I went to college in North Carolina, and I had one goal going into college. I already knew that, like, the grades didn't bother me. My dad said, Brandon, keep above a 3.0 because that means you keep your scholarship. I had like a 3.1 when I graduated. I didn't care about my grades in school because that wasn't helping me make money, right? My dad told me, Brandon, don't work in college, focus on school. I got so freaking bored, I just said, screw it, I'm getting a job. And I go to caddy at Pinehurst, which is one of the top golf courses in the entire country. And now all of a sudden I'm meeting Olympians, I'm meeting people from Australia, I'm meeting CEOs, I'm meeting incredible mothers, just carrying bags on my shoulder. And so I would work at golf courses each summer, and every summer I'd be in a new town, and it seemed like I would have a family that would take me in, and I would get to be a part of their dinners. I would meet a lot of their friends, and so I saw a lot of different families, and I saw a lot of different cities. So through 18 to 22, I saw a lot of different ways to do things, and pair that with what I learned from my parents growing up, I was able to start to shape the direction of the life that I wanted, that I could have never seen if I didn't get around different environments. So if people do want to get change, or if people do want to make some change with their life, I would encourage them to go into different atmospheres so you can experience what that is like. And sometimes it could be a day in a random atmosphere. Sometimes it may have to be like a year time period. I don't think there's a certain amount of time, but experiencing those different things helps you see things in a way that you would have never even known to. I wrote this poem when I was in my mid-20s, and I'm not the best poet, but I love writing, and my mentor challenged me to do poetry, and so forever it will probably be the best poem I've ever written. Very short. It's called Becoming Great. I thought I was good until I saw great. It was then when I understood what achieving my dreams would take. And all that means is you could think you're great at something, you could think life's good, and then you see another way of doing things. For example, if you're a podcaster, and you get to spend a day in Austin, Texas with Joe Rogan. You get to see how he interacts with his guests. You get to meet his team. You get to test the audio equipment. You get to hear the questions he asks. You get to hear about what he liked about the interview after, what he didn't. All of a sudden, you start picking up things that can make you a 10 times better podcast host. So when you see greatness, you start to understand how you can be greater. That's not just with work. That is also with relationships, and that's also with health. Like, if you have a roommate that is going to the gym every day, how much more likely do you think you are going to be to go to the gym every day? If you grow up in a household with a mother and a father who show the dynamics and the polarity of a healthy relationship, how much more likely are you to have a better relationship? So I have a relationship coach, and one of the things that he taught me is he said, Brandon, if a woman has a good relationship with her father and she has a brother, even ideally more, she will automatically have instilled a lot of the traits towards a good partner, because she has had a man in her life or men in her life that have helped understand the polarity of the masculine feminine. And I never knew that. And then once I knew that, I started meeting different people, and I would ask these questions, and you could clearly see the difference between someone who didn't have a father in their life or a father figure, like not every, and someone who did. And so these are things that just really fascinate me. And to go back to your question, it's like, if you want to instill change in yourself, I would highly recommend going into environments that can help you get that change rubbed off over a period of time.
Which those are going to be very, very uncomfortable in the beginning. As we all know, walking into a networking room, you're like, I suck at speaking, I know no one. This is going to suck, but as you said, you're going to improve. You are going to get better over time.
Yeah. Can I share with you one more story?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, please.
So there was a speaker who came to Tony Peck's cigar dinner in December of 2023. Now, I had worked with someone who knew this lady very well. And he said, you got to talk to Brandon. But you also have to go to these events where there's like-minded people. It was a cigar dinner. I don't think she has ever smoked a cigar in her life, nor has any interest in doing so. And so she goes to this cigar networking dinner, and I meet her there. And she starts telling me that she's interested in the speaker school. So we have a phone call. She ends up committing. She almost backed out, but she said, Brandon, the reason why I may not do this is because if I say yes, I'm going all in. And so she said yes, and we ended up getting her into the school systems right away. So she started getting paid very quickly through the guy I teach with. This calendar year in the schools, so the fall and the spring, she did right around $45,000 as a side job. As a side job, speaking. $45,000 as a side job speaking. And now, there's a good chance that could be double this year, right? And this is not even her main business. But why did this happen? Because her friend told her, hey, it's important to go to these different events and atmospheres where there's like-minded people. And so I don't like smoking cigars, but I go to Tony Peck's cigar networking event because every time I go there, I seem to meet someone new. I seem to meet someone who's like-minded. I seem to connect with someone that I haven't connected with in a while, who I really enjoy talking to. And so, yeah, props to you for doing what you're doing, helping more people connect with each other, helping more businesses getting exposed, and getting people on this podcast.
Thank you, man. Yeah, and I actually have one more question, on that take. Why did you decide to partner with us and offer those discounts?
Well, you made it a no-brainer. You told me, hey, like, this is what we're doing. We're trying to get more businesses seen, and we don't see a return unless you see a return, was pretty much how I understood it. And so And you made it easy. Like I asked Mike Moran, president and CEO of the Palace Theater, 1,600 person theater. We co-promoted an event together when I was in my 20s. I said, "Why did you take a shot on me?" He said, "Brandon, you made it easy on me." And when you can make it easy on people like you do, it's just much. I hate to use easy again, but it's just much easier to do business with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, I appreciate it. This was a great conversation. I personally learned a lot from it, so I just want to thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. If you want to stay in the room after, and we can have a conversation after we are over, but is there anything that you want to leave with people, and how can people find you?
My cell phone is 607-348-6136, and then my social media is Brandon Gaydorus, pretty much all of them, or Warm Heart Life. And if I could leave you with one last thing, understand that there is people out there that want to help. And if you don't reach out, it's hard for them to ever know. I have a mentor that's probably worth 100 to 500 million that I get to talk to most weeks, three days out of the week. And a lot of people wonder how that happened. Well, how that happened is I brought value to that person. I stayed in touch with that person, but I also asked. I asked for the help. And he told me 4 years ago, he said, "Brandon, what a lot of people don't understand is successful people want to help out. The problem is we have tried to help out so many people that have not taken our advice. So unless it's asked, it's hard for us to take the initiative. It's hard for us to take the time, energy, and effort to do so unless we know that person wants it." And so if I could encourage one thing, it's understand successful people do want to help. It's just on you to be able to reach out for that advice and for that help.
I'm so happy that you brought that up, because I tell people all the time, no one is going to assume what you need. You have to ask. You have to ask in a very blunt manner and be very straightforward, because they cannot guess and they cannot read your mind. That is great advice. I think everyone should be asking for what they want from people, at least taking the leap, and the worst thing they can do is say no, and you come back a year later. So, Brandon, I just want to say again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Great conversation. I learned a lot, and I appreciate you, man. So thank you so much.
Thank you.